Hi, everyone. So I thought that I had done this, but I haven't. So I'm going to go ahead and provide an audio for the short story in your book. What of this goldfish would you wish? So as you read, we are on page 3 on our textbook. So if you'd like to follow along, please do so. As you read, think about the kinds of things people wish for to make their lives happier. In particular, look for clues to what Sergei Gorolich wants from life. Note any questions as you read. Here's the story. Yonatan had a brilliant idea for a documentary. He'd knock on doors. Just him. No camera crew, no nonsense, just Yonatan on his own, a small camera in hand, asking, "If you found a talking goldfish that granted you 3 wishes, what would you wish for?" Folks would give their answers, and Yoni would edit them down and make clips of the more surprising responses. Before every set of answers, you'd see a person standing stock still in the entrance to his house. Onto this shot, he'd superimpose the subject's name, family situation, monthly income, and maybe even the party they voted for in the last election. All that combined with the 3 wishes. Maybe he'd end up with a poignant piece of social commentary, a testament to the massive rift between our dreams and the often compromised reality in which we live. It was genius, Yoni was sure. And if not, at least it was cheap. All he needed was a door to knock on and a heart beating on the other side. With a little decent footage, he was sure he'd be able to sell it to Channel 8 or Discovery in a flash, either as a film or a bunch of vignettes, little cinematic corners, each with that singular soul standing in a doorway, followed by 3 killer wishes. Precious, every one. Even better, maybe he'd cash out, package it with a slogan, and sell it to a bank or a cellular phone company. Maybe tag it with a little something like "Different dreams, different wishes, one bank." Or "The bank that makes dreams come true." No prep, no plotting, natural as can be. Yoni grabbed his camera and went knocking on doors. In the first neighborhood he went to, the kindly folk that took part genuinely requested the foreseeable things: health, money, bigger apartments, either to shave off a couple of years or a couple of pounds. But there were also powerful moments. One drawn, wizened old lady asked simply for a child. A Holocaust survivor with a number on his arm asked very slowly in a quiet voice, as if he'd been waiting for Yoni to come, as if it wasn't an exercise at all. He'd been wondering, if this fish didn't mind, would it be possible for all the Nazis left living in the world to be held accountable for their crimes? A cocky, broad shouldered lady killer put out his cigarette and, as if the camera wasn't there, wished he were a girl, just for a night, he added, holding up a single finger right in the lens. And there were the wishes from one short block on one small, sleepy suburb of Tel Aviv. Yonatan could hardly imagine what people were dreaming of in the development towns and the collectives along the northern border and the West Bank settlements, the Arab villages, the immigrant absorption centers full of broken trailers and tired people left to broil out on the desert sun. Yonatan knew that if the project was going to have any weight, he'd have to get everyone, to the unemployed, to the ultra religious, to the Arabs and the Ethiopians and the American expats. He began to plan a shooting schedule for the coming days: Jaffa, Diamona, Ashdod, Sderdo, Tiab, Talpio, and maybe even Hebron, even. If he could sneak past the wall, Hebron would be great. Maybe somewhere in that city, some beleaguered Arab man would stand in his doorway and looking through Yonatan and his camera, looking out into nothingness, just pause for a minute, nod his head, and wish for peace. That would be something to see. Sergei Gorolich doesn't much like strangers banging on his door, especially when those strangers are asking him questions. In Russia, when Sergei was young, It happened plenty. The KGB felt right at home knocking on his door. His father had been a Zionist, which was pretty much an invitation for them to drop by any old time. When Sergei had got to Israel, he then moved to Jaffa. His family couldn't wrap their heads around it. They'd ask him, "Why are you looking to find a place like that? There's no one out there but addicts and Arabs and pensioners." But what is most excellent about addicts and Arabs and pensioners is that they don't come around knocking on Sergei's door. That way, Sergei can get his sleep and get up when it's still dark. He can take his little boat out into the sea and fish until he's done fishing by himself in silence, the way it should be, the way it was, until one day some kid with a ring in his ear comes knocking hard like that, rapping at his door, just the way Sergey doesn't like. And he says, this kid, that he has some questions. He wants to be put on TV. Sergey tells the boy, tells him in what he thinks is a straightforward manner, he doesn't want it, not interested. Sergey gives the camera a shove to help make it clear. But then the earring boy is stubborn. He says all kinds of things, fast things, and it's hard for Sergey to follow. His Hebrew isn't so good. The boy slows down, tells Sergey he has a strong face, a nice face, that he simply has to have him for his movie picture. Sergey can also slow down. He can also make clear. He tells the kid to shove off. But the kid is slippery, and somehow, between saying no and pushing the door closed, Sergey finds that the kid is in his house. He's already making his movie, running his camera without any permission. From behind the camera, he's still telling Sergey about his face. It's full of feeling, that it's tender. Suddenly, the kid spots Sergey's goldfish flitting around in its big glass jar in his kitchen. The kid with the earring starts screaming, "Goldfish, goldfish." He's so excited. And this really pressures Sergey, who tells the kid it's nothing. It's just a regular goldfish. Stop filming it. It's just a goldfish, Sergey tells him. Just something he found flapping around in the net, the deep sea goldfish. But the boy isn't listening. He's still filming and getting closer and saying something about talking and a fish and a magic wish. Sergey doesn't like this. He doesn't like that the boy is almost at it, reaching for the jar. In this instant, Sergey understands the boy didn't come for television. What he came for specifically was to snatch Sergey's fish, to steal it away. Before the mind of Sergey Gorlak really understands what it is his body has done, he seems to have taken the burner off the stove and hit the boy in the head. The boy falls. The camera falls with him. The camera breaks open on the floor, along with the boy's skull. There's a lot of blood coming out of the head, and Sergey doesn't really know what to do. That is, he knows exactly what to do, but it would complicate things because if he takes the kid to the hospital, people are going to ask what happened, and it would take things in a direction Sergey doesn't want to go. No reason to take him to the hospital anyway, says the goldfish in Russian. That one's already dead. He can't be dead, Sergey says with a moan. Barely touched him. It's only a burner, only a little thing. Sergey holds it up to the fish and taps it against his own skull to prove it. It's not even that hard. Maybe not, says the fish, but apparently it's harder than that kid's head. He wanted to take you from me, Sergey says, almost crying. Nonsense, the fish says. He was only here to make a little something for TV. But he said, says the fish, interrupting, exactly what he was doing, but you didn't get it. Honestly, your Hebrew is terrible. Yours is better, Sergey says. Yours is so great. Yes, mine's great, the goldfish says, sounding impatient. I'm a magic fish. I'm fluent in everything. All the while, the puddle of blood from the earring kid's head is getting bigger and bigger, and Sergey is up on his toes, up against the kitchen wall, desperate not to step in it, not to get the blood on his feet. You do have one wish left, the fish reminds Sergey. He says it easy like that, as if Sergey doesn't know, as if either of them ever loses count. No, Sergey says, shaking his head from side to side. I can't, he says. I've been saving it for something. For what? The fish says. But Sergey won't answer. That first wish Sergey used up when they discovered a cancer in his sister, a lung cancer, the kind you don't get better from. The fish undid it in an instant, the words barely out of Sergey's mouth. The second wish Sergey used up 5 years ago on Sveta's boy. The kid was still small then, barely 3, but the doctors already knew something in her son's head wasn't right. He was going to grow big, but not in the brain. 3 was about as smart as he'd get. Sveta cried to Sergey in bed all night. Sergey walked home along the beach when the sun came up, and he called to the fish and asked the goldfish to fix it as soon as he crossed the door. He never told Sveta. A few months later, she left him for some cop, a Moroccan with a shiny Honda. In his heart, Sergey kept telling himself it wasn't for Sveta that he'd done it. He'd wished his wish purely for the boy. In his mind, he was less sure. On all kinds of thoughts about other things he could have done with that wish continued to gnaw at him, driving him mad, half driving him mad. The third wish, Sergey hadn't yet wished for. I can restore him, says the goldfish. I can bring him back to life. No one's asking, Sergey says. I can bring him back to the moment before, the goldfish says. To before he knocks on your door? I can put him back to right there. I can do it. All you need to do is ask. To wish my wish, Sergey says, my last. The fish swishes his tail back and forth in the water, the way he does, Sergey knows, when he's truly excited. The goldfish can already taste freedom. Sergey can see it on him. After the last wish, Sergey won't have a choice. He'll have to let the goldfish go. His magic goldfish, his friend. Fixable, Sergey says. I'll just mop up the blood, a good sponge, and it'll be like it never was. The tail just goes back and forth, the fish's head steady. Sergey takes a deep breath and steps out into the middle of the kitchen, out into the puddle. When I'm fishing, well, it's dark and the world's asleep, he says, half to himself and half to the fish. I'll tie the kid to a rock and dump him in the sea. Not a chance, not in a million years anybody will find him. You killed him, Sergey, the goldfish says. You murdered somebody. But you're not a murderer. The goldfish stops swishing his tail. If on this you won't waste a wish, then tell me, Sergey, what is it good for? It was in Bethlehem, actually, that Yonatan found his Arab, a handsome man who used his first wish for peace. His name was Munir. He was fat with a big white mustache, super photogenic. It was moving the way he said it. Perfect, the way in which Munir wished for peace. Yoni knew, even as he was filming, that this guy would be on his promo for sure. Either him or that Russian, the one with the faded tattoos that Yoni had met in Jaffa. The one that looked straight into the camera and said if he ever found a talking goldfish, he wouldn't ask of it a single thing. He'd just stick it on a shelf in a big glass jar, talk to him all day. Didn't matter about what. Maybe sports, maybe politics, whatever a goldfish was interested in chatting about. Anything, the Russian said. Not to be alone. All right, so hope you enjoyed the story, and I'm looking forward to seeing your guys' work and your projects about it. Thanks, guys.